One CEO called a single mother employee into her office, and she thought she would be fired. But the CEO had a secret that would change their lives forever. An unexpected love story and transformation that will move you. Get ready because this story will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment where you are watching from. The digital clock on the computer screen read 4:47 p.m. when the phone rang in Sarah Johnson's cubicle. The shrill sound cut through the constant murmur of the office at Thompson & Partners, making her jump. Her nimble fingers were still typing the last numbers of the quarterly analysis spreadsheet when she answered with her usual professional voice. "Sarah Johnson, Financial Analysis. Sarah, I need you to come to my office now." The deep voice of Michael Thompson on the other end carried an urgency she had never heard before. There was no usual please or any additional explanation. Sarah felt a chill in her stomach. In 3 years working at the company, she had only been to the CEO's office 4 times, always for important presentations or board meetings. Never for a private conversation, and definitely never with that almost personal tone of urgency in his voice. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Her voice betrayed only a slight tremor, imperceptible to anyone who didn't know her well. As she saved the file and quickly organized her desk, Sarah couldn't help but let her mind race with speculation. Would it be about the Santana manufacturing project? She had detected some inconsistencies in the numbers that could indicate accounting fraud. Or perhaps it was about her critical analysis of the investment in the automotive sector, which contradicted the opinion of manager Paul Mendez. Sarah Johnson was a woman who drew attention not for ostentation, but for her natural elegance. At 34, she always maintained an impeccable appearance, even with the tight budget of a single mother. Her brown hair was tied back in a low bun that framed a face with delicate yet determined features. Her dark brown eyes reflected a sharp intelligence and a natural reserve that kept colleagues and superiors at a respectful distance. She wore a navy blue blazer that she had bought on sale 2 years ago, but it still had an elegant cut over her plain white blouse. The elevator slowly ascended to the 15th floor, and Sarah took every second to compose herself. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and mentally repeated the mantra that had sustained her for the past 8 years. "You are capable. You are strong. You can handle anything." The doors opened, revealing the sophisticated environment of the executive boardroom. The dark grey carpet muffled her steps as she walked down the hallway, decorated with paintings by contemporary American artists. Ms. Carmen Smith, the executive secretary, looked up from her computer as she approached. "Good afternoon, Sarah. He's waiting." Carmen was a 58-year-old woman who radiated the silent authority of someone who knew all the company's secrets. Her grey hair was always perfectly styled, and her sober clothing matched the seriousness of her role. But at that moment, Sarah noticed something different in her gaze, a mix of concern and anticipation. "Thank you, Ms. Carmen." Sarah lightly knocked on the dark wooden door before hearing the muffled, "Come in." Michael Thompson's office was imposing, as befitted the CEO of one of the largest consulting firms in the country. Spacious, with a panoramic view of New York that stretched to the urban horizon, where buildings mingled with the first heavy clouds of the afternoon. The smell of strong American coffee perfumed the air, mixed with the subtle aroma of polished wood from the mahogany furniture. Michael stood with his back to the door, gazing out at the city through the window. Even without seeing him face to face, Sarah could sense the tension in his broad shoulders under the perfectly tailored dark grey suit. At 42, he maintained the athletic build of someone who found time for exercise, despite the impossible schedule of a CEO. His black hair, with a few silver strands at the temples, was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hand through it several times, a habit Sarah had noticed when he was particularly focused or worried. "Mr. Thompson?" She remained close to the door, keeping the usual professional distance. He turned slowly, and Sarah felt her breath catch for a moment. Michael's blue-grey eyes, a legacy from his Portuguese grandparents, were filled with an emotion she couldn't fully decipher. It wasn't anger nor professional concern. It was something deeper, more personal. "Sarah, please have a seat." He gestured toward the leather chairs that formed a more informal setting in one corner of the room. "Can you close the door?" The request to close the door made Sarah's heart race. In all her time working there, she had never had a private meeting with the door closed. She complied, feeling each step as if she were walking toward an unknown precipice. "Would you like some coffee, water?" Michael moved around the room with a restlessness that contrasted sharply with his usual composure. "No, thank you." "Is everything okay, Mr. Thompson?" "Did I do something wrong?" The question slipped out before she could contain it, revealing the anxiety she was trying to hide. Michael stopped moving and looked directly at her. "No, Sarah, you didn't do anything wrong. In fact, it's quite the opposite." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "What I'm about to say may sound inappropriate, considering our professional relationship, but I need to be honest with you." Sarah felt her hands grow cold. Inappropriate. Her mind immediately went to the worst possible scenarios. Could it be some form of harassment? She had faced such situations before and knew how to defend herself. But coming from Michael Thompson, it would be devastating not just personally, but professionally. "Sarah, I have been watching you for months. Not just your work, which is exceptional, but you as a person." Michael finally sat down in the chair. She leaned slightly forward, opposite to him. "I see how dedicated you are to your projects, how you treat your colleagues with respect, how you balance work with your responsibilities as a mother." She remained silent, feeling as if she were on increasingly dangerous ground. Where exactly was he trying to go with this? "I know this may sound completely out of place, and if you want to sue me for harassment after this conversation, I would completely understand." Michael took a deep breath. "But I need to be honest. I've developed feelings for you, Sarah, feelings that go far beyond professional admiration." Sarah's world seemed to stop. Michael's words echoed in her mind as if they were spoken in slow motion. Feelings? For her? The CEO of the company, a man who could have any woman he wanted, was there, vulnerable and nervous, confessing feelings for a financial analyst, a single mother with emotional baggage that could scare anyone away? Sarah tried to speak, but the words simply wouldn't come out. "Let me finish, please." Michael gently raised his hand. "I know this is inappropriate. I know there is a hierarchy between us. I know you have a daughter and responsibilities that I can hardly imagine. But I also know that I can no longer pretend these feelings don't exist." Outside, the March sky began to darken, and the first drops of rain started to hit the window. The sound created a melancholic soundtrack for that surreal moment. "What exactly are you proposing?" Sarah finally managed to find her voice, though it sounded rougher than usual. "I'm proposing that we get to know each other better, outside of here, without the pressure of the work environment, without hierarchies." Michael leaned back in the leather chair, but his eyes remained fixed on hers. "A coffee, a lunch, a conversation. I want to know Sarah, the person, not just Sarah, the exceptional financial analyst." Sarah felt a contradictory mix of emotions. Part of her was flattered. Michael Thompson was objectively an attractive, successful man, and in the 3 years she had worked for him, he had proven to be principled and respectful. But the stronger part of her, the part that had been betrayed and abandoned before, immediately raised its defenses. "Mr. Thompson, She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I appreciate your honesty, but I need to be equally honest with you. My life is complicated. I have an 8-year-old daughter who is my absolute priority. I don't have the time or emotional energy for games or casual relationships. I'm not looking for anything casual, Sarah." The response came quick and firm. "I'm 42 years old. If I wanted something superficial, I wouldn't be here, vulnerable like this, risking an extremely uncomfortable situation for both of us." The silence that followed was filled only by the sound of the rain, which was now falling more heavily. Sarah looked at her hands, then at the city view, anywhere but into Michael's penetrating eyes. "I need to think." The words came out as a whisper. Of course. And I want you to know that regardless of your response, this will not affect your position in the company. You are too valuable professionally for my personal feelings to jeopardize your career. Sarah nodded, rising from the chair with slightly trembling legs. Can I go now? Of course. Michael also stood up, accompanying her to the door. Sarah? She turned, her hand already on the doorknob. Thank you for listening to me. I know it wasn't easy. Sarah merely nodded before leaving, gently closing the door behind her. Ms. Carman watched her with a knowing look as she passed by the secretary's desk, but said nothing. In the descending elevator, Sarah leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Her carefully organized and controlled life had just been turned upside down. And the scariest part, a small part of her, a part she had buried long ago, was whispering that maybe, just maybe, she wanted to say yes. Sarah couldn't focus on the rest of her workday. Her eyes remained fixed on the computer screen, but her mind was completely oblivious to the numbers dancing before her. Michael's words echoed incessantly. I've developed feelings for you. How was it possible that she hadn't noticed? Or worse, had she subconsciously noticed and chosen to ignore it? At 6:15 p.m., when she finally shut down her computer, Sarah noticed her hands were slightly trembling. She needed to pick up Lily from school and still stop by the supermarket, but she felt as if she were on autopilot. The heavy traffic in New York in the evening gave her too much time to think, and every red light was an opportunity for her mind to wander into dangerous territories. "Mommy, are you okay?" Lily asked as soon as they got in the car. At 8 years old, the girl had a keen sense for changes in her mother's mood, a result of years of just the two of them against the world. Lily was a miniature version of Sarah, with the same brown hair that insisted on escaping the ponytail and the same expressive eyes. But where Sarah had developed reserve and caution, Lily still maintained the natural curiosity and trust of childhood, despite the absence of a father. "I'm fine, Princess. Just thinking about work." Sarah forced a smile through the rearview mirror. Lying to her daughter always left a bitter taste in her mouth. But how could she explain to an 8-year-old that her mother's boss had just confessed romantic feelings? "Can we order pizza tonight, please?" Lily clasped her hands in dramatic supplication. "I promise I'll do all my homework without complaining." "All right, but just for today." Sarah gave in more easily than usual, grateful for any distraction from the confusion in her head. While they waited for the pizza to arrive, Sarah helped Lily with her math homework at the small table in her 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. The space was modest but cozy, decorated with simple furniture that she had gradually bought, always prioritizing functionality over aesthetics. The walls were covered with Lily's drawings and a few pictures of the two of them. Never complete family photos, because a complete family was something they had never had. "Mom, can I ask a question?" Lily looked up from her math notebook. "Sure, go ahead. Why does Beatrice from school have a dad and a mom and we only have you?" The question hit Sarah like a punch in the stomach. It wasn't the first time Lily questioned the absence of a father, but it always caught Sarah off guard. Sarah put down her pen and turned completely to her daughter. "Remember, I explained it before. Some families are different. We are a small family, but that doesn't make us any less special. But don't you sometimes feel alone, like when I'm sleeping?" Lily had a disturbing ability to ask questions that went straight to the heart of the matter. The doorbell rang, saving Sarah from having to respond immediately. As she paid for the pepperoni pizza and organized the plates, she thought about how Lily's innocent question echoed exactly the dilemma she was facing. She was alone. For 8 years, since she discovered her pregnancy and Lily's father simply disappeared, she had built emotional walls so high that sometimes she forgot there was a world outside. Sometimes we all feel lonely, Princess. But the important thing is that we always have each other, right? Sarah finally replied as she sliced the pizza. "What if you get a boyfriend? Is he going to live here?" Lily asked with the typical nonchalance of children, as if she were asking about the weather. Sarah nearly choked on her pizza slice. "Why are you thinking about that?" "Beatrice's mom said that every beautiful woman like you should have a husband. She said it's strange for a woman to be alone for so long. Lily repeated someone else's words with the brutal honesty of childhood. Anger surged up Sarah's throat like volcanic lava. How dare they comment on her personal life? As if being a single mother was some kind of flaw that needed to be fixed. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she was talking to a child who was just repeating what she had heard. Lily, remember what we always talk about? Families come in all shapes and sizes. There is no right or wrong way to be a family, and no one needs a husband or boyfriend to feel complete. Sarah struggled to keep her voice calm and educational. I know, Mom, but wouldn't you like to have someone to share your problems with? Like when the shower broke and you got really upset? Lily had an unyielding logic that often left Sarah speechless. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Sarah sat on the small sofa in the living room with a cup of tea and finally allowed her mind to fully process what had happened. Michael Thompson, CEO of the company, the most eligible man in New York according to last year's magazine, owner of a fortune she couldn't even fathom, had confessed feelings for her. But why? What would a man like him see in a middle-class financial analyst with complicated emotional baggage and a small child? Paranoia, a constant companion since the betrayal of Lily's father, began to whisper dark theories. Could it be some kind of bet? A fantasy about the humble employee? An impulse from a powerful man used to getting everything he wants? The phone rang at 10:30 p.m., interrupting her torturous thoughts. The number on the screen was not saved in her contacts, but something about it felt familiar. Hello, Sarah. It's Michael. His voice sounded different over the phone, more intimate, less formal. I'm sorry to call so late. I hope I didn't wake you or Lily. Sarah's heart raced. No, I was still awake. Is everything okay? I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. I know you asked for time to reflect, but I need to clarify a few things. There was an urgency in his voice that put her on alert. What kind of things? First, I want you to know that I've been observing you for months, but not in a creepy way. It's just that you caught my attention not only because of your professional competence, but also because of how you treat people, how you remain kind even when Paul is condescending to you in meetings, how your eyes light up when you talk about Lily, how you always have lunch alone reading a book, but you don't seem lonely. You seem complete. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Had he really noticed all those details about her? Michael, she began, but he gently interrupted her. Let me finish, please. Second, I know our situation is complicated because of the professional hierarchy, but I want you to know that I took some measures this afternoon. What kind of measures? Sarah's voice came out tenser than she intended. I spoke with our labor lawyer about the legal implications of a relationship between employees at different hierarchical levels. I want to ensure that you are completely protected, no matter what you decide. Sarah was left speechless. He had thought about her legal protection even before knowing if she was interested. And third, Michael continued, I want to be completely transparent about something I found out by chance that may influence your opinion about my intentions. What do you mean? Sarah felt a cold knot in her stomach. Sarah, I know about your financial situation. Not because I investigated, I would never do that, but because when you requested the advance on your bonus payment last month, HR needed my approval, since it was a large amount. I saw it was to cover a medical emergency for Lily. Sarah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. He knew about the scare they had when Lily had a severe allergic reaction and needed to go to a private hospital because the public healthcare system was on strike. He knew about the humiliation of having to ask for an advance. He knew about her constant struggle to balance the bills. Sarah, are you there? His voice sounded, Are you okay? I am. Her voice came out hoarse. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand that my feelings for you have nothing to do with any savior complex or charity. You are one of the strongest women I know. The fact that you are raising Lily on your own, maintaining an exceptional job, and still finding energy to be kind to everyone around you only makes you more admirable in my eyes. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten to escape. How long had it been since anyone spoke of her this way? As if she were admirable instead of just enough. Michael, this is a lot to process. I know. And I want you to know that I don't expect a quick answer. In fact, I have a proposal. What proposal? Tomorrow is Saturday. How about a completely informal outing? You, me, and Lily. A walk in Central Park, a simple snack. No pressure, no expectations. Just three people getting to know each other better. The mention of Lily made Sarah's heart race even faster. You want to meet my daughter? Sarah, if there's any chance of us building something together, Lily is a fundamental part of the equation. She is your priority, and if you allow me, I would love for her to be my priority too. The tears were now flowing freely down Sarah's face. When was the last time someone had offered to share the responsibility of Lily instead of seeing her as a burden? I need to think, of course. But Sarah, yes? Thank you for giving me this chance to explain. Regardless of what you decide, I needed you to know that my feelings are genuine and respectful. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the dark of the living room for a whole hour. Outside, New York slept to the sound of nighttime traffic and distant sirens. Inside the apartment, only the soft sound of Lily's breathing came from the next room. For the first time in 8 years, Sarah Johnson allowed herself to imagine what it would be like not to be alone. And the image that appeared in her mind, her, Lily, and Michael walking through the park on a Saturday afternoon, was not as frightening as she had expected. It was terrifying in a completely different way. It was hopeful. Saturday dawned with a clear blue sky that contrasted with the typical morning fog of March in New York. Sarah had slept poorly, waking several times during the night with a stomach twisted in nerves. At 7 a.m., after an hour of tossing and turning in bed, she finally got up and went to make coffee. Lily appeared in the kitchen still in her pajamas, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mommy, why are you awake so early?" "It's Saturday." "I couldn't sleep well, Princess." Sarah tried to sound casual as she stirred the coffee more forcefully than necessary. The night before, after much hesitation, she had called Michael back and accepted the invitation for the park outing. But she hadn't told Lily yet. "Can I watch cartoons?" Lily dragged herself to the fridge in search of chocolate milk. "Sure, but first I need to talk to you about something." Sarah sat at the small kitchen table and gestured for Lily to come closer. "Remember yesterday when you asked about me having a boyfriend?" Lily's eyes widened, suddenly alert. "Did you get a boyfriend?" The excitement in her voice was mixed with a hint of apprehension. "Not exactly, but there's a friend who would like to get to know us better. He suggested we go to the park this afternoon." Sarah chose each word carefully, observing her daughter's reactions. "What kind of friend?" Lily had inherited her mother's investigative instinct and was not easily fooled. "He works at the same company as I do." "His name is Michael." Sarah took a deep breath. "And before you ask, yes, he knows you exist and really wants to meet you." Lily was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Is he handsome?" The question drew a genuine laugh from Sarah. "Do you think that's important?" "Beatrice says her stepdad is really handsome. She always brags about it." Lily shrugged with the typical sincerity of children. "Well, yes, he is handsome. But the most important thing is that he seems to be a good person." Sarah hesitated before continuing. "Lily, would you feel comfortable meeting him? If you don't want to, we can cancel." Lily considered the question with the seriousness of an adult. "Is he going to try to be my dad?" The question hit Sarah like a bolt of lightning. "I don't know, sweetheart. For now, he's just a friend who wants to meet us. You don't need to worry about those things right now." "Okay, but if he's boring, can we leave?" "Of course." At 3 p.m., Sarah was too nervous to stay still. She had changed outfits 3 times, finally opting for dark jeans and a light pink top, casual but neat. Lily was dressed in her favorite outfit, a denim skirt and a unicorn-printed t-shirt. "Mommy, you're more nervous than I am when I have a math test," Lily observed as Sarah checked her bag for the 4th time. "I'm not nervous, I'm cautious," Sarah lied outright. They arrived at the main gate of Central Park at 3:30 p.m. The park was as busy as always on Saturdays, families having picnics, joggers, couples walking. Sarah scanned the crowd for Michael, feeling her heart race with each passing second.
Sarah!
She turned and saw him walking toward her. Michael looked completely different from the serious executive she knew from the office. He wore dark jeans and a navy blue polo shirt that accentuated his eyes. His hair was slightly tousled by the wind, and he smiled in a way Sarah had never seen before, a genuine smile free of corporate formality. "Hi," Sarah felt her voice falter slightly. "Hi." Michael stopped at a respectful distance, clearly aware that Lily was watching him with curiosity. "And you must be Lily." "Hi." Lily hid behind Sarah. "Adaptações Sofia." "Lily." "Algodão doce, cotton candy, vendedora, vendedor, parque, parque, balanço." Swing Lily stood slightly behind her mother, but kept her eyes fixed on Michael. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lily. Your mother talks a lot about you." Michael crouched down to be at the girl's level. "She told me that you're very good at math." "I like math, but I don't like English." Lily relaxed slightly. "Do you work with my mom?" "I do." "And I can say that your mom is the smartest person in the entire office." Michael shot a glance at Sarah, who felt her cheeks flush. How about we take a little walk?" Sarah suggested, needing movement to disguise her nervousness. They started walking along the main path of the park. Lily stayed between the two adults, clearly still assessing the situation. Michael seemed to perfectly understand the dynamic and didn't force conversations, allowing the mood to develop naturally. "Lily, do you like to play soccer?" Michael asked after a few minutes of walking. "Sort of. I'm better at volleyball." Lily perked up slightly. "At school they always pick me for the team. What a coincidence. I played volleyball in college." Michael smiled. "I brought a ball if you guys want to play a little." Sarah looked at him in surprise. "You brought a ball?" "I thought it could be fun." Michael seemed slightly embarrassed. "I hope it wasn't too presumptuous." "Can we play, Mommy?" Lily asked, and Sarah realized it was the first time her daughter had shown genuine enthusiasm since they arrived. They found a relatively empty grassy area and started to play. Initially, Lily was shy, but Michael had a natural patience with children that surprised Sarah. He didn't talk down to Lily like many adults did, nor did he try to impress her with elaborate tricks. He simply played at her pace, genuinely praised her successes, and laughed when the ball went astray. "You're really tall," Lily commented after a while, having to stretch her arms to reach the ball that Michael had sent. "That's true. Sometimes it gets in the way more than it helps." Michael laughed. "Once I hit my head on your mom's car door. I mean the company car." Sarah noticed the slip and felt something warm spread through her chest. He had thought of her car as hers, not the company's. After an hour of playing, they sat on a bench in the shade of a leafy tree. Lily was visibly more relaxed, swinging her legs and sipping the juice that Michael had bought from a vendor. "Michael, can I ask you a question?" Lily suddenly said. "Of course. Why do you want to be friends with my mom?" The direct and innocent question made both adults tense up. Michael glanced at Sarah briefly before answering. "Because your mom is a very special person. She's smart, kind, and brave, and anyone would be lucky to have her as a friend. But you have other friends, right?" Lily continued her investigation. "I do, but not like your mom," Michael answered honestly. "Sometimes, when we meet someone special, we want to spend more time with that person." Lily considered this for a moment. "Like when I met Julia at school and wanted to play with her every recess." "Exactly like that," Michael smiled. Sarah watched the interaction with a mix of tenderness and terror. Seeing Michael talk to Lily so naturally and respectfully stirred emotions she had buried deep. But it also awakened old fears. What if this didn't last? What if he disappeared like Lily's father had? "Mommy, can I go play on the playground?" Lily pointed to the children's play area a few meters away. "Yes, but stay where I can see you." Sarah watched her daughter run toward the playground before turning to Michael. "She's amazing," Michael said, watching Lily interact with other kids at the playground. "She's my world," Sarah replied simply. "Can I ask about her father?" Michael hesitated. If it's too personal, you don't have to answer. Sarah took a deep breath. He left when he found out I was pregnant. He never wanted to know anything. Lily doesn't even know who he is. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're fine this way. Sarah tried to sound more confident than she felt. But understand, Lily and I are a package deal. Anyone who wants to be part of my life needs to understand that. I completely understand. Michael turned to face her fully. Sarah, can I be frank with you? She nodded. Being here today, seeing you with Lily, just confirms what I already knew. You're not just an extraordinary woman, you're an extraordinary mother. And that doesn't scare or bother me. In fact, it impresses me even more. Sarah felt tears threaten her eyes. Michael, you don't have to say anything right now. He gently placed his hand over hers on the bench. I just want you to know that this, you, Lily, this life you two have built together, is exactly what I would like to be a part of if you'll let me. At that moment, Lily came running back. Mommy, there's a lady over there selling cotton candy. Can I? Of course. Sarah was taking money out of her bag when Michael stood up. Let me handle it. He approached the candy cart with Lily, and Sarah watched them animatedly chatting with the vendor. When they returned, Lily was beaming, holding a giant pink cotton candy. Look, Mommy, and he got one for you too. Sarah accepted the cotton candy with a smile. Thank you. It was nothing. Michael sat back down next to her. Lily told me that pink is your favorite color. It is. Sarah looked at her daughter in surprise. When had Lily shared that information? The rest of the afternoon passed at a relaxed and natural pace. They walked through the park's gardens, visited the plant nursery, and Lily insisted on showing Michael how good she was on the swing. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange, Sarah realized that she had spent hours without feeling the constant tension she usually carried on her shoulders. I think it's time for us to go, Sarah said, noticing that Lily was starting to get tired. I'll drive you home, Michael offered naturally. No need, we can take the subway. Sarah, please. It would be a pleasure. In the car, a black BMW that smelled of new leather, Lily fell asleep in the back seat before they even left the parking lot of the park. Michael drove carefully, keeping the music low so as not to wake her. How do you feel? Michael asked softly as they waited for a traffic light to change. Confused, Sarah replied honestly. Scared, but, well, better than I expected. Lily is fantastic. She really is. Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror at her sleeping daughter. And she liked you. That doesn't happen often. And you? Did you like me? The question came with a vulnerability that Sarah didn't expect to hear in the confident CEO's voice that she knew from work. Sarah was silent for a moment, observing his profile illuminated by the city lights. Yes, the word came out as a whisper. And that scares me more than you can imagine. When they arrived at Sarah's building, Michael helped carry Lily to the apartment. The girl briefly woke up when he laid her down on the sofa. Bye, Michael, she murmured sleepily. Can you come again? If your mom lets me, I would love to, Michael replied, winking at Sarah. At the apartment door, they stood for a moment in awkward silence. Thank you for the afternoon. It was pleasant, Sarah said. It was for me, too. Michael hesitated. Sarah, can I ask you something? Sure. Can I call you tomorrow? Sarah felt her heart race again. You can. After he left, Sarah leaned against the closed door for several minutes. For the first time in 8 years, she had allowed someone into her carefully constructed world. And the scariest part was that she had enjoyed the experience. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to try again. Monday arrived with a different tension in the office of Thompson & Partners. Sarah arrived at work at 8:30 a.m. as always, but this time her eyes involuntarily searched for Michael's figure in the hallways. She didn't see him all morning, and a part of her felt relieved. She still didn't know how to act naturally after the afternoon in the park. Around 10 a.m., while reviewing the quarterly reports from the chemical industry, the phone rang. Sarah Johnson. Good morning. Michael's voice sounded formal, but she could detect a warmer tone beneath the professional formality. Could you come to my office? I need to discuss some points of the Petrosin report with you. Sure, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Sarah ascended to the 15th floor with her heart racing. Would it be just work, or would he take the opportunity to talk about Saturday? When she entered the office, Michael was standing by the window, wearing a dark grey suit that accentuated his imposing posture. "Can you close the door?" he asked without turning around. She obeyed, feeling a dangerously familiar vibe in the situation. "About the Petrosin report." "There is no Petrosin report, Sarah." Michael turned, and she saw that he was holding a brown envelope in his hands. "I need to show you something. Something I discovered last night." The serious tone in his voice made Sarah tense immediately. "What is it?" "Please have a seat." Michael gestured to the leather chairs. "This might be disturbing." Sarah sat down, watching him approach with the envelope. "Michael, you're scaring me." "I'm sorry, that's not my intention." He sat in the opposite chair, placing the envelope on the coffee table between them. "Sarah, after Saturday, after seeing you with Lily, I knew I wanted to be completely transparent about everything. So I decided to investigate some things about myself that could affect you both." "What kind of things?" Sarah frowned. "My financial situation, my commitments, my family." Michael took a deep breath. "And during this investigation, I found something about you that, well, that changes some things." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean?" Michael opened the envelope and pulled out several documents. "Sarah, did you know that 2 years ago, someone tried to access information about your bank account, your credit history, and even about Lily?" "What?" Sarah leaned forward, snatching the papers from his hands. "That's impossible." "I didn't authorize any inquiries." "Exactly. It was an unauthorized investigation." Michael pointed to a specific line in one of the documents. "And I found out who it was, Paul Miller." Sarah's world seemed to stop. Paul Miller, the HR manager who had always been condescending to her, who always treated her as if she should be grateful just to have a job. Why would Paul do this? "That's the question I would like to ask him." Michael's jaw tightened. "But there's more. Apparently, he also tried to access information about other female employees in the company. 5 women, to be exact." Sarah abruptly stood up, walking to the window. Outside, New York continued its frantic routine, oblivious to the fact that Sarah's world was crumbling again. "How long have you known about this?" "I found out last night. I hired a private investigator to do a background check on myself. I wanted to make sure there was nothing in my past that could harm you or Lily. That's when he found these attempts to access your information." Sarah turned to face him, her eyes shining with anger. "And you decided to investigate my life without asking me?" "No!" Michael stood up quickly. "I didn't investigate you, Sarah. I investigated who was investigating you. There's a crucial difference." "Oh, is there?" Sarah's voice rose an octave. "Because from here, it looks like you decided to invade my privacy just like Paul did." "Sarah, please, let me explain." Michael stepped closer, but she backed away. "Don't come near me." The words came out sharp. "Michael, you don't understand. I spent years building a life where I have control, where no one can you surprise me or hurt me. And now you tell me that 2 years ago, someone was investigating my life, and you decided to do the same thing." "It wasn't the same thing." Michael protested. "I was trying to protect you." "I didn't ask for your protection." Sarah exploded. "I don't need you to save me, Michael. I need you to respect me." The silence that followed was tense and heavy. Sarah was breathing heavily, trying to control the anger and fear that the investigation had awakened. Michael remained still, clearly realizing that he had made a serious mistake. "You're right," he finally said, his voice low and controlled. "I should have talked to you before investigating anything. No matter what my intentions were, I violated your privacy just like Paul did." Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process everything. "I need to know exactly what Paul found out about me." "Not much, fortunately. Your information is well protected." Michael returned to the documents. "But he managed to access your address, the name of Lily's school, and the fact that you received child support." "I don't receive child support," Sarah said automatically. "I know. but the records show a monthly transfer of $800 that appears as child support. Michael watched her carefully. Sarah, where does that money come from? Sarah felt her cheeks flush. That's none of your business. Sarah, if someone is using that information against you, they're not, she cut in. The money comes from my mother. She lives in the countryside and insists on helping me with Lily. I list it as child support in the records because it's less humiliating than admitting that I need financial help from my own mother. The confession came out heavy with shame, and Sarah immediately regretted sharing something so personal. Michael was watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Sarah, he began gently. No, she raised her hand. Don't say anything. I've already humiliated myself enough for today. You haven't humiliated yourself. You're a mother doing what needs to be done to take care of your daughter. Michael's voice was firm. There's no shame in that. Sarah looked at him, searching for signs of pity or condescension, but found only sincerity. Still, that doesn't change the fact that you investigated my life without my consent. You're right. And I'm sorry. Michael returned to his chair, running his hands through his hair. Sarah, can I ask a question? Do you think Paul might be using that information for something? Sarah thought about the question, recalling all the strange interactions she had had with Paul in recent months. I don't know. He's always been weird with me, always making comments about how I'm lucky to have such a good job as a single mother. What kind of comments? Things like, I hope you appreciate this opportunity, or not all single mothers are as lucky as you are. Sarah sat down again, suddenly feeling tired. I always thought he was just a sexist jerk. It could be more than that. Michael leaned forward. Sarah, I need to ask, would you trust me enough to let me investigate Paul properly? With your permission this time. Sarah was silent for a long moment. Why? Why is this important to you? Because if Paul is collecting information about female employees, he might be planning to use it inappropriately. And because, Michael hesitated, because I care about you, Sarah, and if someone is trying to harm you, I want to help stop it. And what if I say no? Then you say no, and I respect your decision, Michael replied immediately. But I will keep my eyes open, because this is also a matter of company security. Sarah looked at the documents scattered on the table. Her private life, summarized in official papers and numbers. The vulnerability of the situation hit her with full force. She had no control over who could access her information, no matter how much she tried to protect her privacy. Michael, if I agree to this, I need some guarantees. What? First, I want to know everything that is discovered, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Second, I want to be involved in any decision about what to do with the information. And third, she hesitated, third, if this is just an excuse for you to access my personal life, I will never forgive you. Michael looked her directly in the eyes. Sarah, you have my word that this is about protecting you and other female employees, not about satisfying my personal curiosity. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, but I want daily reports on the progress. Of course. Michael stood up. Sarah, there's one more thing. What? I think it's best if we keep our personal situation completely separate from this for now. I don't want Paul to be able to use our relationship against us in any way. The word relationship made Sarah's heart race, but she nodded. I agree. That means that at least publicly, we return to a strictly professional relationship until we resolve this situation. Sarah felt a pang of disappointment, but she knew he was right. I understand. Sarah? Michael called her as she headed for the door. Yes? Saturday was one of the best days I've had in a long time. I don't want this to change our chance to build something together. Sarah paused with her hand on the doorknob. Michael, I need time to process all of this. The investigation, your intentions, what it means for Lily and me. Of course, take as much time as you need. And I need you to understand, if we find out that Paul or anyone else is using my information inappropriately, it will completely shake my trust. In you, in the company, in everything. I understand. Sarah opened the door but turned around one last time. And Michael, next time you decide to protect me, ask first. Because protection without consent is just another kind of violation. She left the room, leaving Michael alone with the documents and the weight of his own misguided good intentions. Outside, Sarah returned to her cubicle with her mind in turmoil. In less than a week, her life had shifted from a predictable routine to an emotional roller coaster that included romantic proposals, new relationships, and now a possible workplace conspiracy. And the scariest part? She still didn't know if she could trust the man who claimed to want to protect her. The next 3 days passed in almost unbearable tension. Sarah maintained her professional routine with her usual precision, but she felt constantly watched. Every glance from Paul Miller during meetings, every seemingly innocent comment, every casual interaction in the hallway took on a sinister weight in light of Michael's discoveries. On Wednesday afternoon, Sarah was reviewing the numbers for the Steel project when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Sarah Johnson. Miss Johnson, this is Detective Mark Smith from the Cybercrime Unit. Could you come to the station today? We have some questions regarding unauthorized access attempts to your personal information. Sarah's blood ran cold. How did you find out about this? A lawyer contacted us yesterday representing the interests of Thompson and Partners. Apparently, there are suspicions that an employee of the firm may be committing data privacy crimes. Sarah closed her eyes. Michael had gone to the police without telling her, despite his promise to keep her informed about everything. Can I come at 5 p.m.? Perfect. You'll need to bring identification and any records you have of suspicious activity in your accounts. After hanging up, Sarah sat still for several minutes, trying to control the anger that was rising in her chest. Michael had promised total transparency and had already broken that promise on the second day. At 4:45 p.m., she knocked on his office door without ceremony. Come in. His voice sounded tired. Sarah entered and closed the door with more force than necessary. We need to talk, now. Michael looked up from the documents on the table and immediately noticed her furious expression. What happened? The police called me. They want me to go to the station to talk about attempts to access my information. Sarah crossed her arms. Something you promised you would keep me informed about. Michael's expression shifted to a mix of guilt and frustration. Sarah, let me explain. No, she exploded. There's no explanation that justifies this. You promised total transparency, and you couldn't keep that promise for even 48 hours. The situation escalated faster than I expected. Michael stood up, trying to approach her, but Sarah stepped back. We found out that Paul wasn't just accessing information about female employees. He was selling that data. Sarah felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. What? My investigator discovered suspicious bank transfers. Small amounts but consistent. 500 here, 300 there. Always a few days after he accessed information about female employees. Michael returned to the table and grabbed a folder. Sarah, there are 5 more women in the company who have been investigated by him. And you decided to go to the police without consulting me because we found out that one of the other victims was Jessica Brown from accounting. Remember her? She resigned last month citing personal reasons. Sarah remembered. Jessica was a competent accountant who had left suddenly, leaving everyone surprised. What does that have to do with anything? She was being blackmailed. Michael's voice was low and controlled. Paul discovered she was having an affair and threatened to tell her husband if she didn't pay a monthly amount. Sarah sat heavily in one of the leather chairs. Oh my God. Jessica paid for 6 months before she chose to resign. She is willing to testify, but only if other victims come forward too. Michael sat in the opposite chair. Sarah, I couldn't wait. If Paul is blackmailing female employees, every day that passes is another opportunity for him to ruin more lives. Sarah remained silent, processing the information. What could he use against me? I have nothing to hide. I don't know. But the fact that you're a single mother, that you receive help from your mother, that you've had financial difficulties in the past. In the wrong hands, that information could be twisted. Michael leaned forward. Sarah, have you noticed Paul acting strangely towards you lately? Sarah thought carefully. He has made comments about how I should be grateful for my position. And last week he suggested I should be more sociable at company events. What kind of sociable? He said I should mingle more with the important clients, be more friendly. Sarah made air quotes. At the time, I thought it was just typical sexism, but now it seems he was testing the waters to see if you would be vulnerable to pressure. Michael stood up abruptly. Sarah, I'm going with you to the station. No, the answer came firmly. Michael, I need to do this alone. You've made too many decisions about my life without consulting me. Sarah, please. No. She stood up. I will talk to the police. I will cooperate with the investigation, but I will do it on my terms, alone. Michael was silent for a moment. You're right. I'm sorry for going to the police without talking to you first. I was trying to expedite the process to protect you and the others, but I ended up betraying you again. Yes, you did. Sarah headed for the door. And Michael, until this situation is resolved, keep your distance. Professionally, personally, everything. I need space to process if I can trust you. The cybercrime unit was located in a gray building in downtown New York, surrounded by the constant noise of traffic and vendors selling coffee and pastries. Sarah arrived at 5:30 p.m., still battling the mix of anger and fear that consumed her. Detective Mark Smith was a middle-aged man with a serious expression and a straightforward way of speaking that immediately put Sarah at ease. He welcomed her into a small, functional room with white walls, a metal table. Miss Johnson, thank you for coming. I know this must be very disturbing for you. He gestured for her to sit down. Let's get straight to the point. What do you know about Paul Miller? He is the HR manager at the company where I work. He has always been uncomfortable with me, but I thought it was just typical macho behavior, Sarah replied honestly. Can you give me specific examples of this behavior? Sarah recounted the comments about gratitude, the suggestions to be more sociable, and the condescending way Paul always spoke to her. The detective was taking notes in a small notebook. Miss Johnson, have you ever received inappropriate proposals? Blackmail? Requests for favors in exchange for professional benefits? Not directly, Sarah hesitated. But last week, he suggested I attend a dinner with important clients. When I asked about the details, he was vague and said we would talk later privately. The detective raised his eyebrows. Did you accept? No, I said I needed to check my schedule and then avoided the subject. Very well. Now I need to talk about your personal information. The detective opened a folder. We discovered that Mr. Miller accessed data about your financial situation, home address, information about your daughter, and even the amounts you receive from your mother. Sarah felt nauseous. He knows about Lily? Unfortunately, yes. The age school she attends. The detective watched her carefully. Miss Johnson, at any point did Mr. Miller mention your daughter? A few times. Always comments about how it must be difficult to raise a child alone, or how I should value opportunities to give her a better life. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Do you think he could try to use Lily against me? It's a possibility we need to consider. That's why I will recommend some security measures. The detective leaned forward. First, keep your daughter always accompanied. No going to or from school alone. Second, if Mr. Miller tries to talk to you outside of work, document everything. Record it if possible. Record. Sarah's eyes widened. Miss Johnson, based on the pattern we've identified, Mr. Miller will likely try a direct approach soon. He already has the information. Now he needs to use it. And our experience shows that blackmailers always make the mistake of being too explicit. Sarah left the precinct with her head spinning and a borrowed digital recorder in her pocket. The streets of downtown were already lit by the first streetlights of the night, and she felt vulnerable walking alone to the subway. On the crowded train, leaning against the door, Sarah finally allowed the reality of the situation to hit her fully. Someone had rummaged through her life, collected information about her daughter, and was possibly planning to use it against her. And the man who claimed to want to protect her had made important decisions about her life without consulting her. When she arrived home, Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table, her tongue sticking out in typical concentration. "Hi, Mommy. How was work?" Lily looked up from her notebook. It was uncomplicated, Princess. Sarah sat down next to her daughter. "Lily, I need to talk to you about something important. Am I in trouble?" Lily immediately looked worried. "No, sweetheart. But for a few days, I will pick you up and drop you off at school personally. No going with Aunt Vera or alone, okay?" "Why?" Lily frowned. "Did something happen?" Sarah chose her words carefully. "Just a precaution. Sometimes adults need to be extra careful for a while. Does it have to do with Michael?" Lily's question caught Sarah off guard. "Why do you think that?" "You've been different since Saturday, more nervous." Lily had an alarmingly sharp perception for an 8-year-old. "Did he do something bad?" Sarah hesitated. "It's complicated, Lily. Adults sometimes make decisions thinking they are helping, but they end up complicating things. Like when you forbid me to eat candy before dinner, but I sneak it thinking it will be fine." Lily offered the analogy seriously. "More or less." Sarah smiled despite everything. "Just with bigger consequences." That night, after putting Lily to bed, Sarah sat on the small sofa in the living room with a cup of tea and the digital recorder on the coffee table. Her life had turned into a police drama episode in less than a week. The phone rang at 10 p.m. "Hello? Sarah?" "It's Michael." His voice sounded tired. "Sorry to call so late. How was it at the precinct?" Sarah was tempted to hang up, but her need for information won. "Enlightening. It seems Paul knows much more about my life than I imagined. Sarah, I need to tell you something. Paul asked to speak with me tomorrow. He said he has important information about the efficiency of some employees." Sarah's heart raced. "Do you think he will try to use the information about me?" "It's likely. And if he does, I want you to know that no matter what he says, nothing will change my opinion of you or affect your position in the company." "Michael," Sarah paused, "thank you for letting me know. But I'm still very angry with you. I know. And you have every right to be." Michael paused. "Sarah, no matter what happens between us personally, I will protect you professionally. I promise you that." After they hung up, Sarah stayed awake late, staring at the digital recorder and wondering if she was really prepared for what was to come. The next morning she would find out that she was not. Thursday dawned with a fine, persistent rain that covered New York with a melancholic veil. Sarah arrived at the office at 8:15 a.m., 15 minutes earlier than usual, with the digital recorder discreetly hidden in her navy blue blazer pocket. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned on the computer, but her determination was unwavering. At 9:30 a.m. her voicemail rang. It was an internal message. "Sarah, I need to talk to you urgently. Conference room B." It was 10 a.m., subject performance review. "Paul Miller." Sarah looked at the phone screen for a long moment. Meeting room B was the smallest in the company, tucked away at the end of the corridor on the 5th floor. It was the perfect place for a conversation that Paul didn't want overheard by others. She saved her work, checked that the recorder was functioning, and headed down to the 5th floor. The hallway was empty. Most employees were at their desks working. Sarah took a deep breath and knocked on the door of room B. "Come in, Sarah, and please close the door." Paul's voice sounded different, more controlled, almost predatory. The room was small and claustrophobic, with only an oval table and 6 chairs. Paul was sitting at the head, wearing a navy blue suit that highlighted his small, calculating eyes. At 45, he maintained an impeccable appearance that contrasted with his unpleasant personality. His grey hair was perfectly styled, and he smiled in a way that made Sarah feel nauseous. "Have a seat, Sarah. We have a lot to discuss." Paul gestured to the chair on his right, closer than Sarah would have liked. She deliberately chose the opposite chair, keeping the table between them. "You said it was about a performance review." "It is." "Your performance? And how it can improve significantly." Paul opened a folder that was on the table. "You know, Sarah, I've been watching you for some time. A hard-working woman, dedicated, an exemplary mother. Thank you. Sarah kept her voice neutral, remembering the detective's instructions to let Paul speak. But also a woman with needs, financial needs mainly. Paul pulled out some papers from the folder. $500 a month for Mom, an apartment rented in Brooklyn. Private school for Lily that costs almost half your salary. Sarah felt her blood run cold, but forced herself to remain impassive. I don't see how my personal financial situation is relevant to a work meeting. Oh, but it's very relevant, dear Sarah. Paul leaned back in his chair, clearly savoring the moment. Because people in delicate financial situations sometimes need to be more flexible in their professional approaches. What exactly are you suggesting? Sarah kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. Well, there are opportunities in the company for employees who demonstrate special dedication. For example, next month we have that important dinner with the clients from Mendoza Construction. They are very generous with employees who know how to entertain properly. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. Entertain how? Come on, Sarah, you're a smart woman and very attractive. Paul leaned forward, his eyes scanning her body in a disgusting manner. Important clients sometimes expect certain courtesies, and employees who provide those courtesies are rewarded accordingly. Are you asking me to prostitute myself? The words came out before Sarah could hold back. Paul laughed, an unpleasant sound that echoed in the small room. What an ugly word, Sarah. I'd say it's more advanced networking. And before you feel offended, think of the benefits. $5,000 per event. Enough money to put Lily in an even better school. Maybe even buy your own apartment. Sarah stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. Sit down, Sarah. Paul's voice changed, losing all its friendly pretense. Because I'm not finished talking. I have nothing more to listen to. You do. Paul pulled more papers from the folder. Because if you don't sit down and listen to me properly, I'll have to talk to some clients about certain irregularities I've discovered in your financial analyses. Sarah stopped halfway to the door. What irregularities? Well, it's interesting how your analyses always favor companies that coincidentally make donations to Lily's school. As if you were being influenced by personal interests, Paul smiled maliciously. Of course, we know that's not true. But suspicious clients might not see it that way. Sarah turned slowly. You're making false accusations. I'm creating a plausible narrative. And plausible narratives can destroy careers, Sarah, especially when the person in question is a single mother without resources to defend herself legally. Paul tapped his fingers on the table. Now sit down and let's discuss how you can avoid this unpleasant situation. Sarah returned to the chair but remained on the edge, ready to bolt if necessary. What do you want, Paul? I've already explained. Cooperation at special events. And maybe some occasional personal favors. He leaned even further forward. Nothing too demanding. Dinners, drinks, pleasant company. And who knows, depending on how you behave, some more intimate opportunities. And if I refuse, then tomorrow morning I'll be in Mr. Thompson's office with very convincing evidence that you've accepted bribes from clients in exchange for favorable analyses. Evidence that includes suspicious bank deposits, like those $500 a month from your mom. Paul made air quotes with disdain. It will be interesting to see how Mr. Thompson reacts when he finds out that his trusted financial analyst is corrupt. Sarah felt as if she had been struck by lightning. You can't prove any of this because it's not true. I don't need to prove it, Sarah. I just need to create enough doubt. And once the seed of suspicion is planted, Paul spread his hands. Well, you know how these things work. Rumors spread, reputations are destroyed, and unemployed single mothers have a hard time finding new jobs. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Sarah could hear her own heart beating and the distant sound of rain against the window. Paul watched her like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. How much time do I have to decide? Sarah finally asked. I'm glad you're being reasonable. Paul smiled again. Until Monday. The Mendoza event is on Tuesday. It will be your first. Opportunity to demonstrate your new collaborative attitude. And if I agree to do this once, will it stop there?" Paul laughed loudly. "Sarah, do you really think this is a one-time negotiation? No, dear, this is a new phase of her career. A phase much more profitable and interesting." Sarah stood up again, this time with controlled and deliberate movements. "I need to think. Of course. But remember, Monday morning I want an answer. And if it's no, by Tuesday morning you'll be clearing your desk." Paul put the papers in the folder. "Oh, and Sarah, if you think about telling anyone, remember that I have much more information about you than I showed today. Information about Lily, about your mom, about where you live." The veiled threat about Lily made Sarah see red. "If you lay a finger on my daughter, now, no need to dramatize." Paul stood up, clearly pleased with the reaction he had provoked. "Just cooperate and everyone will be happy. Resist and, well, consequences have a nasty way of spreading." Sarah left the room with shaky legs, but managed to reach the women's restroom before vomiting. Leaning against the sink, looking at her pale reflection in the mirror, she finally understood the full extent of the trap she had fallen into. Paul was not just blackmailing her. He was systematically destroying her life, piece by piece, until the only option left was complete submission. But he had made a crucial mistake. He had threatened Lily, and Sarah Johnson could accept many things being done against her, but she would never allow anyone to threaten her daughter. With still trembling hands, she took the recorder out of her pocket and checked if the entire conversation had been recorded. It had. Now it was time to strike back. Sarah dried her face, straightened her blazer, and left the restroom with a determination she hadn't felt in years. She would go up to the 15th floor, knock on Michael Thompson's door, and this time it would be her who called the shots. Paul Miller had just discovered why one should never threaten a mother and expect her to bend in submission. Sarah did not hesitate as she reached the 15th floor. She walked straight past Ms. Carmen's desk, who tried to intercept her with a "he's in a meeting," and knocked firmly on Michael's door. "Come in," his voice sounded surprised. Sarah opened the door and found Michael on the phone, gesturing for her to wait. But she was not in the mood to wait. "Hang up the phone now!" Her voice came out with an authority she didn't know she possessed. Michael looked at her for a moment, saw the determination in her eyes, and said on the phone, "I'll call back in an hour." He hung up immediately. "Sarah, what?" "Paul just blackmailed me." She placed the digital recorder on his desk. "And threatened my daughter." Michael's expression changed instantly. All professional cordiality vanished, replaced by a dangerous coldness that Sarah had never seen before. "Tell me everything." Word for word. Sarah sat down and recounted the entire conversation, watching as Michael's face grew darker. When she reached the part about Lily, he abruptly stood up and walked to the window, his hands clenched into fists. "Son of a bitch!" The words came out low but filled with controlled rage. "Sorry for the language, but I completely agree with the diagnosis," Sarah interrupted. "Michael, I need your help. Not as whatever we are personally. I need the CEO of the company to take this man down." Michael turned to face her. "You have my full support. But first, we need to ensure that you and Lily are safe. The detective has already advised me on basic security measures. Not enough." Michael went back to the desk and picked up the phone. "Carmen, cancel all my appointments this afternoon and connect me with Antonio Rivera from Corporate Security." Sarah watched as he made a series of quick and efficient calls. In 15 minutes, he had arranged discreet security for her and Lily, hired a lawyer specializing in labor crimes, and scheduled a meeting with the police for that very afternoon. "Michael, you don't have to," Sarah began. "Yes, I do," he interrupted her. "Sarah, he threatened an 8-year-old child. An employee of my company is being blackmailed under my roof. This is personal and professional for me. And then, when this is over, are you going to expect me to be grateful enough to accept your romantic advances?" The words came out harsher than Sarah intended, but she needed to know. Michael stopped moving and looked her directly in the eye. "Sarah, do you really think I would do that?" "I don't know. A week ago, I didn't think someone like Paul existed in the company. Now I don't know who I can trust." Michael sat in the chair opposite hers, leaning forward. "So let me be very clear. I will help you because it's the right thing to do. Because you are a valuable employee being pursued by a predator. And because Lily is an innocent child who does not deserve to be threatened." He paused. "If, after all this is over, you decide you never want to see me again, either as your boss or as a man, I will completely respect that decision." Sarah studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity or manipulation. She found only sincerity and a controlled rage that mirrored her own. "All right," she nodded. "What do we do now?" "Now you go home, be with Lily, and let the professionals handle this." Michael stood up. "Tomorrow morning, Paul will be called in for a disciplinary meeting. At 2 p.m., the police will execute a search warrant on his computer and files." "How did you get a warrant so quickly?" "Detective Smith uncovered more evidence last night. Apparently, Paul was blackmailing not only employees, but also clients." Michael opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "A client's wife discovered that her husband was being extorted and went to the police. Her recording was the final piece they needed." Sarah felt a mix of relief and apprehension. "And if he tries to do something, are you going to be able to handle this before being arrested?" "You won't succeed." Michael picked up the phone again. "Carmen, please ask Mr. Roberts to come up here immediately." 2 minutes later, a tall and imposing man entered the room. Anthony Roberts looked more like a bodyguard than a corporate security chief, with broad shoulders and a presence that radiated professional competence. "Anthony, I need you to personally coordinate the security for Ms. Johnson and her daughter until the situation with Paul Miller is resolved." Michael made the introductions quickly. "Of course, Mr. Thompson." Anthony addressed Lily's mother. "Ms. Johnson, I will accompany you to pick up your daughter from school today. Starting tomorrow, one of my most experienced men will take over this role until it is no longer necessary." "Is that really necessary?" Lily's mother felt overwhelmed by the speed at which everything was happening. "Paul Miller has access to detailed information about your routine and Lily's," Anthony replied seriously. "Desperate men do unpredictable things. It's better to be safe." Lily's mother nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. "All right, Marina," Michael called her attention. "There's one more thing. Tomorrow afternoon, after Paul's arrest, I will call a general meeting with all the female employees of the company. I want to make it clear that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated, and I want to encourage anyone who has gone through similar situations to come forward. You're going to expose what happened to me, only if you authorize it, and only the necessary details to alert other potential victims." Michael hesitated. "Marina, I suspect you were neither the first nor the only one. Some female employees who resigned in recent years may have left for similar reasons." The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of procedures and precautions. Anthony accompanied Lily's mother to Lily's school, discreetly explaining to the principal the need for extra security measures. Lily accepted the presence of Uncle Anthony with the typical adaptability of children, especially after he explained that he was a special friend of Mom, helping with work stuff. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Marina sat on the small sofa in the living room and finally allowed the reality of the situation to hit her fully. In 1 week, her life had transformed into something unrecognizable. A month ago, her biggest concern was balancing the monthly budget. Now she was dealing with blackmail, threats, and police protection. The phone rang at 10 p.m. "Hello? Marina? It's Jessica Brown." The voice on the other end sounded nervous. Marina sat up straight. "Jessica, how did you get my number?" "Detective Smith gave it to me. He said you also." "That Paul also tried—" Jessica couldn't finish the sentence. "Tried this morning," Marina confirmed softly. "Oh my God!" Jessica sighed heavily. "Marina, I need to tell you something. Paul hasn't stopped bothering me even after I left the company." Marina felt a chill in her stomach. "What do you mean?" "He calls me every week. He says that if I tell anyone anything, he will spread information about me to my new co-workers." Jessica's voice trembled. He knows where I work now, Marina. He knows everything about my life. Jessica, did you tell the police? I will tell them tomorrow. Detective Smith scheduled to hear me again. Jessica paused. Marina, I wanted to warn you. Paul is more dangerous than he seems. When he realizes he's losing control, he becomes desperate. What do you think he might do? I don't know. But when I left the company, he said something that haunts me to this day. Jessica took a deep breath. He said that women like us always end up paying for trying to be smarter than men like him. After they hung up, Marina stayed awake for hours, staring at the door of Lily's room and wondering if she had made the right decisions. For the first time in her adult life, she was not facing her problems alone. She had Michael, Anthony, the police, a support network she had never experienced before. But she also knew that Paul Miller was still out there, still had access to the information he had gathered about her, and now knew that his crimes were being investigated. As Jessica had said, desperate men do unpredictable things. Marina checked the locks on the doors once more before finally going to bed. Anthony's number saved on speed dial and the sound of every nighttime noise making her heart race. Tomorrow, one way or another, everything would be decided. Friday dawned with a clear and cold sky, typical of autumn in New York. Marina woke up at 5:30 a.m. after a restless night filled with nightmares where Paul threatened Lily in dark and endless hallways. She checked 3 times to make sure all the doors were locked before waking her daughter. Mom, why is there a strange car parked in front of the building? Lily asked while having breakfast, pointing out the kitchen window. Marina looked and saw a black Civic with tinted windows. It's Uncle Anthony. Remember I told you he would take care of our security for a few days? Like a bodyguard from the movies? Lily's eyes lit up with interest. More or less. Marina forced a smile. Do you think that's cool? Super cool. Can I tell Emily? Lily clapped excitedly. No, sweetie. It's better to keep it a secret for now. It's part of his special mission, Marina improvised, grateful for her daughter's active imagination. At 7:45 a.m., Anthony rang the doorbell. He was a different man from the day before. Where there had been professional formality, Marina now detected a subtle tension that kept her alert. Good morning, Miss Johnson. Lily. He greeted both warmly, but his eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. Ready for school, little one? Absolutely. Lily grabbed her backpack, clearly thrilled with the adventure. In the car, while Lily hummed softly in the back seat, Anthony spoke quietly to Marina. There was a complication this morning? Marina felt her stomach tighten. What's the complication? Paul Miller didn't show up for the disciplinary meeting. When we went to his apartment, we found the place empty. It seems he left during the night. Did he run away? Sarah tried to keep her voice steady so as not to alarm Lily. We don't know yet. He might have fled, or he could be planning something. Anthony stopped at a red light and turned to face her. That's why I'll stay close today. And I want you to call immediately if anything seems off, no matter how small. They dropped Lily off at school without incident. The principal, Ms. Helena, had been briefed on the situation and assured that Lily would be constantly supervised. Sarah said goodbye to her daughter with a tighter hug than usual. Mom, are you okay? Lily asked, noticing the tension. I'm fine, Princess. I'll see you at 5 p.m. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. I love you. I love you too. And will Anthony pick me up as well? We'll see. Sarah exchanged a glance with Anthony, who nodded discreetly. At the office, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Rumors about Paul's sudden absence were spreading through the halls, and Sarah could feel curious eyes following her as she walked to her cubicle. At 9:30 a.m., Miss Carmen called. Sarah, Mr. Thompson wants to see you immediately. Sarah went up to the 15th floor, finding an unusual activity. There were 2 people she didn't recognize talking to Michael in the reception area. A man in a dark suit and a woman with an official appearance. Sarah, these are Detectives Smith and Brown. Michael introduced them quickly. They want to ask you some questions. Miss Johnson, thank you for cooperating. Detective Smith greeted her. We need to know if Paul Miller tried to contact you since yesterday. No, no phone calls, emails, or messages, Sarah replied. And did you notice any suspicious activity? Unknown cars, strange people in your building? Detective Brown asked. No, nothing, Sarah hesitated. Did he really run away? We're still investigating. But we found some concerning items in his apartment. Detective Smith exchanged glances with Michael. Photos of you and Lily, very detailed. Some taken recently. Sarah felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. He was following us? It seemed so. For several weeks, Detective Brown showed some photos on a tablet. Do you recognize these places? Sarah looked at the images and felt nauseous. Photos of Lily leaving school, of herself at the supermarket, of the two of them at the park last Sunday. Oh my God, how long has he been doing this? Based on the timestamps, at least a month. Michael stepped closer, placing a protective hand on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah, we've decided that you and Lily will stay in a hotel tonight. Just as a precaution. A hotel? Sarah turned to face him. For how long? Until we find Paul and determine his intentions, Detective Smith replied. Ms. Johnson, he took some equipment from the office when he fled, including a laptop with access to company data. What kind of data? Sarah asked, though she already knew she wouldn't like the answer. Personal information of employees. Addresses, phone numbers, family details. Michael looked furious. He violated practically all of the company's security protocols. Detective Brown received a call and stepped away to answer. When he returned, his expression was grim. They just found Paul's car abandoned at LaGuardia Airport. Did he flee the country? Sarah asked. We don't know. It could be an attempt to throw us off, or he might have actually boarded a flight. Detective Smith put away the tablet. In any case, we will intensify security measures. The rest of the morning passed in a succession of procedures and precautions. Sarah was escorted to her apartment to grab clothes for herself and Lily, always accompanied by Anthony and a police officer. Seeing her home being searched for evidence of invasion or surveillance made the reality of the situation even more concrete. Ms. Johnson, we found this. The police officer showed a small electronic device that had been stuck under the kitchen window. It's a listening device. Sarah leaned against the wall, feeling her legs go weak. He was listening to our conversations? Apparently. Anthony examined the device. But it's a cheap model with limited range. He needed to be close to pick up anything. How long has this been here? Sarah asked. Hard to say without technical analysis, but probably a few weeks. The officer placed the device in an evidence bag. We'll check for others. They found 2 more devices, one in Lily's room and another in the living room. Sarah had to sit on the couch when the reality fully hit. Paul had invaded her home, had listened to intimate conversations between her and Lily, had violated her privacy in the deepest way possible. Sarah breathed. Anthony crouched beside her. I know it's disturbing, but now that we know, we can protect ourselves properly. He heard Lily praying before bed. Sarah murmured, tears streaming down her face. He heard when she asked me why she doesn't have a dad. He heard when I cried after talking to you. And now he will never hear anything again. Michael's voice came from the door. He had arrived at the apartment after finishing procedures at the company. Sarah, we need to get out of here now! At 4 p.m., Sarah and Michael were sitting in the living area of a suite at the Renaissance Hotel in downtown New York. Lily was in the adjacent room. Fascinated by the large-screen TV and the room service, she had ordered a cheeseburger and French fries. How are you feeling? Michael asked, watching Sarah drink her 3rd cup of coffee in the afternoon. Violated, furious, scared, Sarah replied honestly. And guilty. Guilty about what? For not noticing. For exposing Lily to this. Sarah placed the cup on the table. Michael, if I hadn't accepted your invitation to go out, if I hadn't drawn attention to myself... Stop. Michael leaned forward. Sarah, this is not your fault. Paul was a predator who carefully chose his victims. If it weren't you, it would have been someone else. But it was me, and... it was Lily. Sarah stood up, walking to the window overlooking Avenue of the Americas. Michael, if anything happens to her because of this, it won't happen. His voice was firm. Sarah, look at me. She turned, and he stepped closer until he was just a few inches away from her. Paul Miller is a coward who preys on vulnerable women because he feels powerful. But now he's running desperate, and that makes him stupid. Michael gently placed his hands on her shoulders. And you're not alone in this fight. You have the police, professional security, lawyers, and you have me. Why? Sarah asked, looking directly into his eyes. Why are you doing all this? The truth, Michael. Michael paused for a moment, as if carefully choosing his words. Because last Saturday, seeing you with Lily in the park, I finally understood what real family is. And no one threatens my family without consequences. Family. Sarah repeated, her voice barely a whisper. If you let me. Michael gently touched her face. Sarah, I know the timing is terrible, and I know you have 1,000 reasons not to trust men in general, and me specifically. But I need you to know I'm in love with you, and with Lily, and I will protect both of you with my life if necessary. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, searching for signs of insincerity or manipulation. But all she found was sincerity, determination, and something she hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine love. Michael, she began, but was interrupted by his phone ringing. Thompson, he answered without taking his eyes off her. Sarah watched his expression shift from affection to alertness, then to something that seemed like relief. Got it, yes, keep the surveillance until we confirm. Thank you, he hung up. They found Paul. Where? Sarah asked. LaGuardia Airport. Trying to board a flight to Portugal with fake documents. Michael smiled for the first time in days. He was arrested an hour ago. Sarah felt her legs give way, and if it weren't for Michael supporting her, she would have fallen to the floor. It was relief, exhaustion, and an emotional release so intense that she began to cry uncontrollably. It's over. Michael held her against his chest. Sarah, it's over. You're safe. Lily is safe. Mom. Lily's worried voice came from the door. Why are you crying? Sarah turned to her daughter, wiping her tears. These are good tears, Princess. Very good. Lily ran to them, and Michael naturally opened his arms to include her in the embrace. The three stayed like that for several minutes, an improvised family united by extraordinary circumstances, but connected by something much deeper. It was, Sarah realized, the first time in 8 years that she felt truly protected. 3 weeks after Paul Miller's arrest, Sarah's life had found a new rhythm. The Renaissance Hotel had been replaced by her apartment, but now with a security system that Michael had insisted on installing. Lily had returned to her normal school routine, although she still occasionally asked about the bad man who had tried to do bad things to Mom. It was a sunny Saturday morning when Sarah finally felt brave enough to have the conversation she had been postponing for weeks. Lily, I need to talk to you about something important. Sarah sat on her daughter's bed, where Lily was organizing her doll collection by height. Is it about Michael? Lily asked without looking up from her dolls, but with a mischievous smile at the corner of her mouth. Sarah blinked, surprised. How do you know? Mom, I'm 8 years old. I'm not silly. Lily finally looked at her. He likes you. You like him. And he likes me too. And how do you feel about that? Sarah asked, amazed by her daughter's perception. Lily considered the question seriously. He's nice. And he made those bad men stop bothering us. And when he smiles at you, you look happy in a way I've never seen before. Sarah felt tears threaten her eyes. Lily, if Michael and if we decide to date for real, it would change some things for us. What kind of things? Lily sat up in bed, giving her mother her full attention. Well, he would spend more time with us. Maybe have dinner here a few times a week. Maybe we would go out together on weekends. Sarah paused. And eventually, if all goes well, maybe he would want to live with us. Lily was silent for a moment, swinging her legs that couldn't reach the floor. He would be like a dad to me. The question hit Sarah as it always did, direct and unfiltered. If you wanted him to, yes, but only if you wanted to, Lily. No one will ever force you to accept someone as a dad. And if I wanted to, but then change my mind? Sarah smiled at her daughter's practical wisdom. Then we would talk about it. All important decisions in this house will always be made by us together, okay? Lily nodded solemnly. Can I ask a question? Of course. Do you think he would help me with math homework? Because you're terrible at math, Mom. Sarah laughed out loud. Hey, I'm not terrible. Mum, you counted on your fingers when I asked what 7 times 8 was. Lily giggled. Michael seems good with numbers. Yes, he is very good with numbers. Sarah pulled Lily into a hug. So, what do you think? Can we give him a chance? Sure, but with one condition. Lily pulled away from the hug, adopting a serious expression. What condition? If he moves in here, he has to learn how to make pancakes. Yours always come out burnt. That afternoon, Sarah called Michael. They had spoken almost daily since Paul's arrest, but always about practical matters, testimonies, legal procedures, security issues. This was the first time she called just to chat. Hello? The voice, hello, are you busy? Sarah settled onto the couch in the living room. Never too busy for you. How are you all? Good, better. Sarah took a deep breath. Michael, I talked to Lily today. Oh. She could imagine him tensing on the other end of the line. And how did that go? She said you need to learn how to make pancakes. There was a pause. Pancakes? Apparently, if you're going to live with us eventually, you need to contribute culinary skills that I don't have. Sarah smiled. Mine always burn. Sarah... His voice turned husky. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I'm ready to try. For real this time. Sarah closed her eyes. I'm saying you were right at the hotel. We are a family. And families face tough things together. Can I come over now? The urgency in his voice made her laugh. Lily is at the neighbor's house until 6. If you come now, we can talk, alone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Michael arrived in 15 minutes, bringing flowers for Sarah and a pancake recipe book he had bought on the way. Sarah greeted him wearing a simple blue dress he had never seen. The first time she had dressed up for him without any professional pretext. You look beautiful, he said, handing her the flowers. Thank you. Sarah felt her cheeks flush. Come in. We can talk in the living room. They sat on the small couch, initially keeping a respectful distance. But Sarah realized she didn't want distance. After weeks of fear and uncertainty, she wanted closeness, security, connection. Michael, I need to tell you some things before we move forward. Sarah turned to face him completely. I'm listening. First, I'm difficult. I have trust issues. I'm stubborn. And sometimes Lily and I form a team that can be intimidating to outsiders. Sarah counted on her fingers. Second, I have no experience with serious relationships. Lily's father was my only real relationship, and it was a disaster. Third, Michael asked with a gentle smile. Third, I'm scared. Very scared. Sarah's voice dropped. Scared of opening up and being rejected. Scared of Lily getting attached to you and then you leaving. Scared of not being enough for someone like you. Michael leaned closer, taking her hands. Can I respond to those concerns? Sarah nodded. First, I don't care if you're difficult. Easy women don't interest me. And Lily is your daughter. It's clear you two are a team. I want to be part of that team, not break it. Michael gently kissed her hands. Second, I also have no experience with serious relationships that really matter. I've had convenient, socially acceptable relationships, but never anything that made me want to be a better person. And third, Sarah asked, echoing his question. Third, Sarah Johnson, you are more than enough. You are extraordinary. Michael touched her face. You raised a fantastic girl on your own. You faced a predator to protect her. You built a solid career against all odds. And you still find the energy to be kind, funny, and caring to everyone around you. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. Michael, can I kiss you? He asked, moving his face closer to hers. Please. The answer came out as a whisper. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, filled with weeks of tension and repressed feelings. But it quickly deepened, becoming more urgent, more necessary. Sarah found herself pulling Michael closer, her hands tangling in his hair, all the fear and resistance dissolving in the warmth of the moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. "Wow," Sarah murmured, resting her forehead against his. "Yeah," Michael agreed. "Sarah, I love you. I love you, and I love Lily. I want to build a life with you both. I love you too." The words came out naturally, without the weight Sarah had imagined they would carry. "And I'm ready to build something new." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about expectations, fears, hopes. Michael spoke about his lonely childhood as an only child of workaholic parents, about how he had always wanted a warm, noisy family. Sarah shared stories about Lily, about the challenges of being a single mom, about her dreams for her daughter's future. When Lily returned at 6 in the evening, she found them cooking together in the small kitchen, or rather, trying to cook pancakes together with questionable results. "Did you burn the pancakes too?" Lily observed, amused. "We're learning," Michael laughed. "Maybe you can teach us?" "I can make pancakes," Lily announced proudly. "Aunt Mary taught me." And that's how Sarah found herself watching Lily teach Michael how to make pancakes properly, the three of them laughing at the disastrous attempts and celebrating the small successes. It was domestic, chaotic, and perfect in a way Sarah had never imagined possible. When Lily went for a shower later, Sarah and Michael were left alone, washing the dishes. "So," Michael dried a plate. "What's the next step?" "Slowly," Sarah replied, but she was smiling. "Dinner here once a week. Weekend outings. Meeting your family. Letting you meet my mom. Does your mom know about me?" Sarah laughed. "Michael, my mom knows everything. She was just waiting for me to decide to tell her officially. And after that? In a few months?" Michael leaned closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. "In a few months, if all goes well, maybe we can talk about you moving in here. Or us moving to a bigger place." Sarah leaned against him. "And maybe eventually about marriage." "Marriage?" Michael raised his eyebrows. "Eventually," Sarah emphasized. "Lily mentioned she would like to be a bridesmaid someday. Apparently, she has already planned the dress." Michael laughed, kissing the top of her head. "She is definitely your daughter." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "And if you're lucky, maybe she will be your daughter too, someday." They stayed like that for several minutes, embraced in the small kitchen, listening to Lily sing in the shower. It was a simple moment, in a domestic setting, yet filled with promises for the future. For the first time in 8 years, Sarah Johnson was not just planning to survive the next day. She was planning to live, truly live, with someone who loved her for who she was, not despite who she was. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, a September morning brought with it the aroma of blooming jacarandas that adorned the streets of New York with their purple petals. Sarah woke up in the new apartment, a 3-bedroom in Brooklyn, that she, Michael, and Lily had chosen together, to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. She stretched in bed, smiling as she recognized the familiar voices. Michael and Lily were preparing Saturday morning coffee, a tradition they had established in the past few weeks since he officially moved in with them. "Dad, you're putting too much sugar in the batter." Lily's voice sounded authoritative. Sarah stopped breathing for a moment. Lily had started calling Michael Dad naturally 2 weeks ago, without fanfare or asking for permission. It just happened. During dinner, when she asked him to pass the salt, and since then, the word came out as naturally as breathing. "Sorry, boss," Michael's playful voice replied. "You're in charge in the kitchen." Sarah got up, put on her robe, and walked to the kitchen. The scene she found warmed her heart. Michael, still in pajamas, was wearing the flowery apron that Lily had insisted he wear, mixing batter, while the girl supervised with the seriousness of a professional chef. "Good morning, family," Sarah announced her presence. "Mom, we're making special pancakes." Lily ran to hug her, with heart-shaped strawberries. How sophisticated. Sarah kissed the top of her daughter's head before approaching Michael. "Good morning." "Good morning, love." He kissed her gently, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing in recent months. Sarah watched the two return to their cooking task, and she felt overwhelmed by such intense gratitude that it almost knocked her over. 8 months ago, she was a woman struggling alone to keep her head above water. Today, she had a real family, built with love, patience, and the courage to trust again. "Mum, can you help decorate?" Lily extended a piping bag filled with whipped cream. "Of course, Princess." The three spent the morning creating pancakes that were little works of art, some more successful than others. Michael turned out to be surprisingly talented with the whipped cream, creating elaborate flowers that made Lily clap with joy. "Dad, can you teach that to Grandpa Miguel when he comes to visit us?" Lily asked, licking whipped cream from her fingers. Sarah and Michael exchanged glances. Michael's father, Miguel Thompson, was coming from Portugal next week to officially meet his new family. It was an important step. Miguel was a traditional man who had initially expressed some reservations about his son getting involved with a woman with baggage, as he had delicately put it. "Of course," Michael replied. "Grandpa will love to learn." After breakfast, while Lily watched cartoons in the living room, Sarah and Michael sat on the small balcony of the apartment with fresh coffee and the Sunday newspaper. "Nervous about your dad?" Sarah asked, watching Michael flip through the pages absent-mindedly. "A little," he admitted. "Not about what he will think of you. Anyone with 2 functioning neurons will adore you. But I'm nervous about how he will react to the speed of everything." Sarah nodded. In traditional terms, they had indeed moved quickly. 6 months from their first date to cohabitation was a pace that would make any conservative parent raise their eyebrows. "Michael, can I ask you a question?" Sarah turned in her chair to face him. "Always. Do you regret the speed? Do you sometimes feel like you missed out on something by not having a normal dating experience?" The question had occasionally bothered her over the past few months. Michael set the newspaper aside and pulled her chair closer. "Sarah, do you want to know what my first thought was when I woke up today?" "What?" "That I've never been so happy in my life." He gently touched her face. "A normal dating experience is overrated. I prefer our version, intense, real, built under extraordinary circumstances. Even with all the problems, Paul, the investigation, the adjustments, Lily being sometimes possessive." Sarah listed the difficulties they had faced. "Especially because of those things." Michael interrupted her. "Sarah, easy relationships are forgettable. We fought for this. We built this together. It's solid in a way that relationships that have never been tested can never be." Sarah leaned in to kiss him, but was interrupted by Lily shouting from the living room. "Mom, Dad, there's a lady on TV talking about you." They rushed to the living room, where Lily was pointing at the television. On the screen, a reporter was in front of the Thompson and Partners building. 6 months after the scandal that shook one of the largest consulting firms in New York, the company has implemented new employee protection policies that are being considered a model for other organizations. Sarah sat heavily on the couch. Even after all this time, seeing the situation with Paul mentioned in the media still made her uncomfortable. "Can I change the channel?" Michael asked, grabbing the remote. "No." Sarah held his arm. "I want to listen." The report continued, explaining how Thompson and Partners had become a pioneer in anti-harassment policies and personal data protection. They interviewed Jessica Brown, who now worked as a digital security consultant, and Detective Smith, who spoke about the importance of reporting corporate crimes. The victim, who initially reported the case, preferred to remain anonymous, the reporter explained, but her courage to come forward resulted in the creation of protocols that have already protected dozens of other women in similar situations. Mom, you're famous," Lily said, impressed. "Not exactly, Princess," Sarah laughed, "but it's nice to know that something positive came out of it." After the report ended, Michael turned off the TV and sat next to Sarah. "How do you feel, watching this on TV?" Sarah considered the question. Strange, but also proud. Not for having gone through that, but for having faced it, and for having helped others without knowing. "Mom, are you like a superhero?" Lily asked, settling between them on the couch. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a mom who did what she had to do to protect her family." Sarah kissed her daughter's head. "But that's exactly what superheroes do," Lily protested. "They protect the people they love." Michael laughed. "Lily is right. You are our superhero." That afternoon, while Lily played in the Cume, a condo playground, Sarah and Michael walked hand in hand through Brooklyn. It was the kind of simple outing that Sarah had learned to appreciate, time together without an agenda, just enjoying each other's company. "Sarah, can I talk about something?" Michael stopped in front of a jewelry store window. "Sure." Sarah followed his gaze and noticed he was looking at the engagement rings on display. "I know we talked about eventually discussing marriage, but—" Michael turned to face her. "How much is eventually?" Sarah felt her heart race. "Why do you ask?" "Because I wake up every day knowing I want to spend the rest of my life with you and Lily. Because when my dad asked about my serious plans, I realized I want to have serious plans." Michael took her hands. "Because I love you, Sarah. I love our life together, and I want it to be official." Sarah looked at him, then at the window, then at Lily, happily playing a few feet away. "Michael?" "You don't have to answer now," he hurried to say. "I just wanted you to know that I'm ready, whenever you are." Sarah was silent for a moment, processing the indirect proposal. Marriage, official family, legalizing something that already felt completely real and permanent. "Can I ask a question?" she finally said. "Anything. If I say yes, not now, but if I do you promise we will do it our way? No pressure from your family, no social expectations about how it should be." "Our way," Michael confirmed immediately. "Small, intimate, focused on what really matters." "And do you promise that Lily can be involved in all the decisions? Like, she can choose her own bridesmaid dress, decide what flowers she wants to carry?" "Lily is our daughter. Of course she will be involved in everything." Michael smiled. "In fact, I suspect she will end up planning the whole wedding." Sarah laughed, imagining Lily with a notebook planning every detail. "And do you promise that if I say yes, it's because we want to be together, not because we feel we should?" "Sarah." Michael stopped walking and pulled her closer. "I've never done anything in my life because I had to, especially when it comes to you." Sarah watched him for a long moment, searching for any sign of doubt or pressure. She found only love, certainty, and infinite patience. "Then my answer is yes." The words came out more easily than she expected. "Not for tomorrow, not for a month from now. But yes, I want to marry you, Michael Thompson." The smile that lit up Michael's face was so radiant that Sarah felt as if the sun had come out from behind the clouds. He spun her around in the air, kissing her as people passed by, smiling. On the sidewalk. "Dad, Mom! Why are you two kissing in the street?" Lily had appeared out of nowhere, hands on her hips in a playful disapproval pose. "Because your dad just asked me to marry him," Sarah replied, still laughing. Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Can I be a bridesmaid? Can I choose my dress? Can I help pick the cake?" "You can do all that and more." Michael knelt down to her level. "But first I need to ask you an official question too." "For me?" Lily looked confused. "Lily Johnson, would you give me the honor of being your official dad? Forever?" Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." And there, on the busy sidewalk of Brooklyn, with the sound of New York traffic in the background and the scent of cherry blossoms in the air, Sarah Johnson finally understood what it meant to be complete. Not because a man had saved or completed her, but because she had found someone who wanted to build a life alongside the life she had already built. Someone who saw Lily not as a burden, but as a gift. Someone who transformed their family of 2 into a family of 3 and made it feel like the most natural thing in the world. 6 months earlier, Sarah thought she knew the limits of her happiness. Today, she discovered there were no limits when you had the courage to love again. And as they walked back home, the 3 of them hand in hand, Lily chattering excitedly about bridesmaid dresses and wedding cakes, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of her true love story. A story that included scars from the past, but was built entirely on hope for the future. A story that proved happy endings don't only happen in fairy tales. Sometimes they happen for brave single mothers who decide to risk their hearts once more. And sometimes those happy endings are even better than any fairy tale could imagine.